What if that nagging feeling in the back of your neck was real? What if those hands reaching out from the dark that you believed were there were there? What if the monster in the basement really existed? And what if there was really something under the bed? Would you have the courage to face your fears?
Hello, brave souls. Today's story is called Dead Calm, a Zombie Tale at Sea. Act 1. The sea stretched out before Michael Chen like a vast blue canvas, endless and unthreatening. From the railing of the Oceanic Majesty, the world's newest and most luxurious cruise liner, he watched the sunset paint the horizon in violet oranges and pinks. Day 3 of the 14-day Caribbean cruise, and for the first time in months, Michael felt the knot in his chest begin to unwind. "Sir, would you care for a drink?" Michael turned to find a steward holding a tray of colorful cocktails. He selected something blue and fruity, nodding his thanks. Sipping it, he felt the rum warm his throat. 3 days ago, he'd boarded this floating palace as a last resort, a desperate attempt to escape his life after finding divorce papers on the kitchen counter when he returned from a business trip. Jennifer hadn't even had the courage to face him. She'd simply left a note saying she was staying with her sister. "Beautiful evening," said an elderly woman who had appeared beside him at the railing. She wore an elegant sundress and held a martini glass that caught the dying sunlight. "It is," Michael said politely. "I'm Eloise," she offered. "Traveling alone?" Michael nodded. "Wasn't the original plan." "Ah." Her eyes crinkled with understanding. "Well, there are worse places to nurse a broken heart than on a ship with 3,000 strangers and unlimited food." Despite himself, Michael smiled. "It's one way to look at it." "You should join our table tonight," Eloise suggested. "My husband Harold and I are dining with some lovely people. One more won't crowd us." Before Michael could form a polite rejection, the ship's intercom crackled to life.
"Good evening, passengers. This is Captain Reynolds speaking. We've received reports of a medical emergency in several major coastal cities. As a precaution, we're adjusting our course to remain in the international waters until we receive further instructions. Our next port of call may be delayed. We apologize for any inconveniences. Please enjoy the remainder of your evening."
Murmurs rippled through the passengers along the deck. "Well, that's certainly unusual," Eloise remarked. "What do you suppose it means?" Michael frowned, remembering the strange news alerts he ignored before boarding. Something about an unknown illness spreading rapidly in Miami, the very city they'd departed from. He'd been too consumed with his personal problems to pay attention. "Probably nothing serious," he said, more to reassure himself than her. "They're just being cautious." That night, dinner proceeded with forced normalcy. Harold, a retired doctor, proved to be sharp-witted and charming. The young honeymooning couple, Aisha and Marcus, were from Atlanta and couldn't stop touching each other. The fifth member of their table, an intense man named Victor who claimed to work in government research, kept checking his phone despite the spotty service. "My colleague says it's spreading faster than he predicted," Victor muttered during dessert, his eyes fixed on his screen. "What is?" Michael asked, suddenly alert. Victor looked up, seeming to remember where he was. "Oh, nothing, just work stuff." Later that night, unable to sleep in his cabin, Michael made his way to the ship's internet cafe. He paid the exorbitant fee for satellite internet access and found himself staring at headlines that turned his blood cold. Unknown pathogen spreads through major coastal cities. Miami under quarantine after violent incidents. CDC warns of unprecedented contagion rate. A video began playing, shaky footage from a Miami street where a woman in a bloody dress attacked a police officer, biting into his neck with inhuman ferocity. The officer's partner shot her repeatedly, but she kept coming until a final shot to her head dropped her to the pavement. Michael sat back, stunned. This couldn't be real. This was the stuff of movies, not reality. His phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. "Are you safe? They're saying ships might be the only safe places now." I'm sorry about everything. Please be careful. As he stared at the message, the lights in the cafe flickered once, twice, then went out completely. Morning brought artificial normalcy. The crew maintained a cheerful demeanor, but Michael noticed increased security at all dining areas. Captain Reynolds made another announcement. They had remained at sea indefinitely due to widespread civil unrest in coastal regions. Internet and phone services were suspended to conserve resources. Michael found Eloise and Harold at breakfast, their faces tense despite their smiles. Harold's been speaking to one of the medical staff, Eloise whispered when Michael sat down. They've got people quarantined in the infirmary, crew members who were in port before we left. How bad is it? Michael asked. Harold's expression was grave. If what I'm hearing is correct, unprecedented. The infection rate, the symptoms, it's unlike anything in modern medical history. But we're safe here, right? Michael pressed. We're isolated. Harold and Eloise exchanged glances. For now, Harold said carefully. But ships need to dock eventually. We have maybe 2 weeks of supplies at standard rationing. At that moment, Ray's voices caught their attention. Near the buffet, 2 security officers were confronting a disheveled-looking man, a kitchen worker, judging by his uniform. Sir, you need to come with us, one of the officers was saying. You've been exposed. The worker's eyes were bloodshot, his movements jerky. I feel fine, he insisted, though sweat poured down his ashen face. Just tired. Those are the early symptoms. Those are the early symptoms, Harold murmured. Fever, disorientation. Without warning, the worker lunged at the nearest officer, teeth bared. There was a sickening crunch as he bit into the man's forearm. Passengers screamed and scattered as the second officer tackled the worker to the ground. Everyone return to your cabins immediately, a voice commanded over the intercom. This is not a drill. Security Protocol Alpha is now in effect. As people rushed for their exits, Michael grabbed Eloise's arm. Come on! But Harold stood frozen, his medical training taken over as he watched the bitten officer writhe on the ground. It's not possible, he whispered. The transformation shouldn't be that fast. Harold, we need to go, Eloise pleaded. The bitten officer had stopped moving. Then, horrifyingly, he began to twitch. His eyes snapped open, but they were different now, clouded, inhuman. He lurched to his feet with unnatural speed. Run! Michael shouted, pulling Eloise toward the exit. Harold followed, but not before witnessing the newly infected officer attack a woman who had fallen into the chaos. In the corridor, alarms blared. Passengers pushed and shoved, panic spreading faster than any pathogen. Michael kept a firm grip on Eloise's hand as they fought through the crowd. Harold struggled to keep up, his elderly frame buffeted by the surging mass of people. We need to get to our cabin, Harold gasped. B deck, room 237. That's the opposite direction from mine, Michael said. We can't separate, Eloise insisted. Not now. A scream echoed from behind them. Michael turned to see people running from another infected crew member who staggered down the hallway, blood dripping from his mouth. In that moment, Michael made a decision. Your cabin's closer. Let's go. As they hurried through the corridors, the ship that had represented escape just days ago had become a floating trap. And somewhere in the chaos, the infection was spreading, turning paradise into a nightmare. Act 2. By evening, the Oceanic Majesty had transformed from luxury liner to floating prison. Michael, Harold, and Eloise huddled in the elderly couple's cabin, listening to the announcements that promised control of the situation. Promises that grew less convincing with each passing hour. The infection is spreading through bites and bodily fluids, Harold explained, his doctor's training providing their only reliable information. Once infected, victims develop fever and disorientation within hours. After death, the pathogen somehow reanimates basic motor functions. You mean they become zombies, Michael said flatly. Harold winced at the term but nodded. Essentially, the reanimated bodies retain no consciousness, only a drive to attack and spread the infection. Eloise sat in the bed, clutching a family photo. Our daughter is in Boston with her children. If coastal cities are infected... Don't think about that now, Harold said gently. We need to focus on survival. Michael had been inventorying their supplies. Some snacks, bottled water, Harold's heart medication, and a small first aid kit. This won't last long. We need to venture out for more supplies. It's too dangerous, Harold objected. The security protocols. A knock at the door silenced them. Michael grabbed a lamp, ready to use it as a weapon, and approached cautiously. Who is it? Aisha and Marcus, came a woman's voice. From dinner last night. Please, we need help. Michael cracked the door open to find the honeymooning couple, distressed but uninfected. Aisha's eyes were red from crying. We were trapped in the casino when it happened, Marcus explained as they entered. People started attacking each other. It was a bloodbath. Have you seen any crew members? Michael asked. Anyone in charge? Aisha shook her head. Only security guards, and they're just sealing off sections of the ship where the infection is spread. We heard they're gathering survivors in the main theater, Marcus added. Supposedly, the captain is organizing a response team. Michael considered their options. We should go there. Safety in numbers. And maybe there's a plan. I'm not sure I can make it that far, Harold admitted, looking suddenly frail. We'll help you, Michael assured him. But first, we need weapons. Using improvised tools, they crafted makeshift weapons. A knife taped to a curtain rod for Michael, a heavy fire extinguisher for Marcus, and smaller implements for the others. Before leaving, Michael checked the corridor. Clear for now. The theater is 3 decks up. We'll take the service stairs, less exposed than the main staircase. As they moved through the silent hallways, evidence of chaos was everywhere. Overturned furniture, smeared blood, abandoned belongings. Occasionally they froze at sounds of movement, but encountered nothing until they reached B-Deck's forward section. There, blocking their path to the stairs, was a woman in a torn evening gown. Her back was to them, her movements unnatural and jerky. Blood covered her front, visible even from behind. We need to go around, Michael whispered. As they began to retreat, Eloise's foot caught on debris. The clatter was slight, but enough. The woman spun with inhuman speed, revealing a face contorted beyond recognition, jaw snapping as she lurched toward them. Go! Michael yelled, pushing the others back as he faced the creature with his makeshift weapon. The infected woman charged. Michael braced himself, then thrust the spear forward as she came within range. The knife pierced her shoulder, but she kept coming, grabbing the shaft. Michael tried to pull back, but her strength was unnatural. Marcus stepped in, swinging the fire extinguisher with full force against her head. She crumpled, unmoving. Jesus, Michael breathed, looking sick. Head trauma, Harold noticed clinically, though his voice shook. Seems to be the only way to stop them permanently. They continued through the ship, encountering and avoiding more infected. The crew's attempts at containment had clearly failed. Entire sections were overrun. When they finally reached the theater deck, they found the entrance guarded by armed security officers. Actual weapons, not improvised ones. State your name and cabin number, one demanded, his finger nervously on the trigger of what appeared to be a ship's emergency pistol. After they were vetted and checked for bites, they were allowed inside. The theater, designed to hold 600 people, contained perhaps 100 survivors. On stage stood Captain Reynolds, looking haggard, with his remaining senior officers. Maintaining communication with coastal authorities, he was saying as they entered. Military vessels have been dispatched to evacuate uninfected passengers, but their arrival time is uncertain. A man in the audience stood up. It's been nearly 24 hours. How many more will die waiting? We're implementing all possible safety measures, the captain replied with forced calm. The infected have been contained to lower decks. Contained? Another voice cut in. It was Victor, the intense man from their dinner table. Is that what you call it? I just watched 2 of your officers get torn apart on C deck. The crowd grew restless. Michael guided his group to seats near an exit. instinctively preparing for a quick escape if needed. Please, the captain urged. Panic will only worsen our situation. We have armed security teams protecting this area. The ship's doctor is working to understand. The ship's doctor is dead, a crew member interrupted, stepping onto the stage. I just came from the infirmary. Everyone there is either infected or... The implications hung in the air. Without medical staff, any injury, any infection. What about the lifeboats? Someone shouted. We're thousands of miles from land, the captain responded, without proper provisions and navigation. Better than being eaten alive! The meeting devolved into chaos. People shouting contradictory demands. Security struggling to maintain order. Michael turned to his group. This isn't helping anyone, he said. We need our own plan. What about Victor? Aisha suggested. He seemed to know something about this infection before it started. Michael scanned the crowd and spotted Victor slipping out a side door. Stay here, he told the others. I'll talk to him. He followed Victor through service corridors until they reached an area marked crew only. Victor used a key card. Where he'd gotten that? And entered. Michael caught the door before it closed and followed him into what appeared to be a communications room. Victor spun around, startled. What are you doing here? Looking for answers, Michael said. You knew about this before it happened. Victor's expression hardened. I'm with the CDC. We've been tracking this pathogen for weeks. It started in a research lab. A weaponized rabies variant that escaped containment. By the time we identified it, Miami was already infected. Why didn't you warn people? Why didn't you stop the ship from leaving port? It wasn't my call, Victor said defensively. Besides, by the time we understood the severity, it was too late. The political ramifications of causing panic. Political ramifications? Michael couldn't believe what he was hearing. People are dying! And more will die unless I can transmit this data. Victor gestured to his satellite phone and laptop. I've been collecting infection patterns, symptoms, progression rates. If we can get to the remaining CDC teams, they might develop a treatment. Is that even possible? A cure? Not a cure, Victor clarified. The dead stay dead. But for the recently infected, those still in early stages, maybe a way to halt progression. A distant explosion rocked the ship. Emergency lights flickered. What was that? Michael asked. Victor looked grim. The infected are gathering near the engine room. If they breach that area... Another explosion. Closer this time. Alarms blared. We need to get back to the theater, Michael urged. Gather survivors. Form a defensive group. It's too late for that, Victor said, frantically typing on his laptop. Look! He turned the screen to show security camera feeds. The theater's exits were being overrun. Infected crew and passengers poured in from multiple entry points. On screen, Michael watched in horror as the crowd realized too late they were trapped. Eloise and Harold are in there, Michael said. Aisha and Marcus too. I'm sorry, Victor said, and Michael was stunned to realize he meant it. But our priority has got to be getting this data out. It's the only chance to prevent this from consuming the entire globe. Michael stared at the screen, watching the carnage unfold. In the chaos, he spotted Harold protecting Eloise, using his body as a shield as they retreated toward the stage. Aisha and Marcus were fighting back-to-back near the orchestra pit. I need to help them, Michael said. You'll die, Victor stated bluntly. Maybe, but I can't just watch. As Michael turned to leave, the ship lurched violently. The explosion must have damaged something vital. Metal groaned around them as the massive vessel began to list. The hull's been breached, Victor realized. We're taking on water. The communications equipment slid across the tilting floor. The satellite phone smashed against the wall, pieces scattering. No! Victor lunged for it, but it was beyond repair. We need to get to the lifeboats, Michael said. Now! The data is useless if we're dead, Michael finished. Come on! They fought their way through tilting corridors, avoiding the infected when possible, confronting them when necessary. The ship's increasing angle made movement difficult. Water was flooding through the lower decks, creating a new threat. Near the boat deck, they encountered a security officer bleeding but still human. Most of the lifeboats are gone, he told them between labored breaths. Crew panicked and took them. Against orders. Are there any left? Michael asked. Port side, aft. Maybe one or two. Hurry! As they continued, Michael realized he couldn't abandon the theater survivors without trying to help. I need to go back for them, he told Victor. You're committing suicide, Victor argued. I'll meet you at the boats. If I'm not there in 20 minutes, leave without me. Before Victor could protest further, Michael was running back toward the theater, navigating through the increasingly unstable ship. When he reached the theater doors, he found them barricaded from within. He pounded on them. It's Michael from B-237! The doors cracked open. Marcus's face appeared, streaked with blood. Michael, thank God! Inside, the survivors, now fewer than 30, had created a defensive position on the raised stage. The infected couldn't climb well, giving them a temporary advantage. We need to get to the lifeboats, Michael told them. The ship is sinking. Harold's been bitten, Eloise said quietly. She sat beside her husband, who looked feverishly already. I won't leave him. Eloise, Michael began. I've had 57 wonderful years with this man, she interrupted. I won't abandon him now. Harold gripped her hand, his eyes clearing momentarily. Go with them, my love. Please. She shook her head firmly. Till death do us part. I meant it. Michael felt a lump in his throat. At least let me get you somewhere safe. We'll hold them off here, Harold said, his voice surprisingly strong. Give the rest of you time to escape. It's the most useful thing we can do now. Other wounded survivors nodded in agreement. Those too injured to move quickly would create a diversion, buying time for the others. I'll stay too, offered an older crew member. I know how to barricade these doors properly. With heavy hearts, Michael and the remaining survivors said their goodbyes. Eloise pressed a locket into Michael's hand. If you make it, find our daughter. Tell her we love her. Michael nodded, unable to speak. Leading the survivors through the ship was like navigating a nightmare. The vessel groaned around them, metal warping as compartments flooded. Twice they were forced to detour and they encountered groups of infected. Several people were lost in these encounters, each death weighing on Michael like a physical burden. By the time they reached the boat deck, only 15 remained. And there, as promised, was Victor guarding the last lifeboat, which could hold 20 at most. You made it, Victor said, genuine surprise in his voice. No time for reunions, Michael replied. We need to launch now. As they loaded the survivors, a terrible scream echoed across the deck. A horde of infected had found them, pouring from a stairwell 30 yards away. Get in! Michael shouted, helping Aisha and Marcus aboard. Victor, cast off! What about you? Aisha cried. Michael grabbed a broken pipe from the deck. I'll hold them off. Buy you time to lower the boat. Michael, don't! Marcus began. Someone has to. Michael, cut him off. I've got no family waiting. You all do. It wasn't entirely true. There was Jennifer, whatever remained of their relationship. But in that moment, Michael felt a clarity he hadn't experienced in years. His life had meaning now, even if only in its ending. Victor, he called. Get that data to someone who can use it. Victor nodded solemnly. I will. I promise. As the infected rushed toward them, Michael charged forward, swinging his makeshift weapon. Behind him, he heard the creaks of davits as the lifeboat began to lower. Each infected he struck down was another second for the boat to descend, another chance for those 15 lives to continue. Pain exploded in his shoulder as teeth sank into flesh. Michael roared, smashing his attacker's skull with desperate strength. More came, an unstoppable wave. He retreated step by step toward the railing, leading them away from the descending lifeboat. Through a gap in the horde, he saw the boat reach the water. Safe. They were safe. Blood loss made his vision swim, but satisfaction filled his heart. Michael backed against the railing, the ship now listing dramatically. Below, dark water churned. The infected closed in, eyes vacant, movements mechanical. With his remaining strength, Michael planted his feet against the railing and launched himself at them. They went down in a tangle of limbs, sliding across the tilting deck toward the opposite side. The ship groaned one final time, a death knell for this floating city that had become a tomb. As cold water rushed over the deck, Michael felt a strange peace. The infection burning through his veins no longer mattered. In his final moments of clarity, he thought of Jennifer and hoped she was somewhere safe. Then darkness claimed him as the mighty oceanic majesty slipped beneath the waves. Act 3. The lifeboat drifted on calm seas under a merciless sun. 5 days had passed since the oceanic majesty sank, taking with it thousands of lives, both the living and the undead. Of the 15 who had escaped in the lifeboat, only 12 remained. One had succumbed to previously undetected bites. Another had died from dehydration. His body committed to the depths after Victor confirmed no infection. The thirds had simply disappeared during the night, whether by suicide or accident. No one knew for certain. Aisha sat with her back against Marcus, both of them staring vacantly at the horizon. Their honeymoon cruise had been meant to start their life together. Now they wondered if they would have a future at all. Water ration, Victor announced, passing a carefully measured capful to each survivor. Their supplies were dwindling dangerously. The emergency provisions in the lifeboat had been designed for a shorter rescue window than the one they faced. "See anything?" Marcus asked a young woman who had been scanning the horizon with emergency binoculars. She shook her head. "Nothing. No ships, no land." Victor consulted the GPS unit, its battery fading. "We're on the projected Coast Guard rescue grid. If they're still conducting search operations, they should find us." "If," someone repeated bitterly. No one had to voice what they were all thinking. If the infection had spread as rapidly on land as it had on the ship, rescue might never come. The world they had left behind might no longer exist in any recognizable form. As dusk approached, bringing slight relief from the heat, Victor retrieved a satellite radio from a waterproof case. It was their most precious possession, a link to whatever remained of civilization. He had been rationing his battery, turning it on only once daily to transmit their coordinates and listen for responses. Today, like every day before, he was met with static across more frequencies. But as he was about to turn it off, a voice crackled through, faint but unmistakably human.
Repeat. All survivors in the Atlantic Quadrant. Military extraction at following coordinates. This is a clean zone. Verified infection-free. You will be subject to quarantine procedures. Repeat.
The survivors crowded around as Victor frantically transcribed the coordinates. When plotted, they indicated a position roughly 40 miles from their current location. "We can make it," Victor said, calculating with the GPS. "If we row continuously, we can reach it in 24 hours. "What if it's a trap?" one survivor asked. "What if they're just gathering people to experiment on?" "Does it matter?" Marcus responded. "We're almost out of water. We have no food. We either risk it or die here." No one could argue with that logic. They organized into rowing shifts, 4 people at a time, rotating every 2 hours. Progress was slow but steady, each stroke bringing them closer to either salvation or a new nightmare. During his rest period, Victor sat beside Aisha, who had withdrawn into herself since the sinking. "I keep seeing his face," she said suddenly. "Michael's is standing there on the deck as we were lowered away." Victor nodded. "He saved us all. He didn't even know us. We had one dinner together." "Sometimes it's all it takes," Victor said. "One moment to define a life." Aisha looked at him. "You knew about the infection before anyone else. You could have warned people." Victor didn't deny it. "I tried. My superiors buried the reports. National security concerns, they said. By the time anyone took it seriously." He trailed off, then continued more quietly. "I should have gone public immediately. That guilt will stay with me forever." They rode through the night, guided by stars and GPS, the endless ocean indifferent to their struggle. When dawn broke, several people had developed blisters that broke and bled, making rowing agony. Still, they continued. Midday brought their first sign of hope. Aircraft noise. A military helicopter appeared on the horizon, growing larger as it approached. Their survivors waved frantically, using emergency flares to signal their position. The helicopter hovered above them, its downdrift creating choppy waves around the lifeboat. A loudspeaker crackled.
Remain stationary. Prepare for inspection.
A uniformed figure was lowered on a cable, landing expertly in their boat, wearing a hazmat suit. The soldier's face was invisible behind a mask. He carried what looked like a medical scanner.
I need to check each of you,
he announced, his voice muffled.
Any bites or scratches must be declared now.
One by one, they submitted to their examination. When he reached Victor, he paused.
CDC? You got ID?
Victor produced his waterlog credentials.
You're on a priority list,
the soldier said.
Command will want to debrief you immediately.
What's the situation on land? Marcus asked. The soldier hesitated.
Containment protocols are in effect in all major cities. That's all I'm authorized to say.
After confirming all survivors were uninfected, the soldier radioed the helicopter. Shortly, a rescue basket was lowered. They were extracted 2 at a time. The process was slow but methodical. As their lifeboat, home for 5 desperate days, grew smaller beneath them, Aisha clutched Marcus's hand. Do you think we'll ever be safe again? She whispered. He had no answer. The military base occupied a small island that had been once a resort destination. Now it served as both a quarantine facility and command center for Atlantic rescue operations. The survivors were processed through decontamination, medical examination, and finally debriefing. Victor was separated from the group immediately, his CDC status and knowledge of the pathogen making him valuable to the military scientists. Before leaving, he pressed a small object into Aisha's hands, Harold's heart medication. Find Eloise's daughter, he murmured. Tell her what her parents did. People should know they were heroes. The debriefing revealed the scope of what they had survived. The infection had indeed spread throughout coastal regions around the world. Major cities were under quarantine. Many effectively lost. Rural areas remained safer, their natural isolation providing a buffer against rapid transmission. The good news, their military liaison explained, is that we've established safe zones. The infected can't swim, can't pilot boats. Islands like this one, properly secured, remain infection-free. And the mainland? Someone asked. Recovery operations are ongoing, came the careful response. That's all we can share at this time. Translation. The situation was dire. After 3 weeks in quarantine, the survivors were given options. Remain at the base and support roles, transfer to larger safe zones in the Caribbean, or for those with specialized skills, join recovery operations in the mainland. Aisha and Marcus chose to stay. Both had medical training. She was a nurse, he a physical therapist, making them valuable to the overcrowded facility. They were assigned quarters in what had once been a luxury beachfront bungalow, now converted to Spartan military housing. 1 month after their rescue, Aisha found herself standing on the beach at sunset, watching military vessels patrol the perimeter. Marcus joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. I made contact with Boston today, he said quietly. They found Eloise's daughter. She's in a safe zone there. Aisha nodded, tears welling. I'm glad. And, Marcus hesitated, I found someone who knew Jennifer, Michael's wife. Aisha looked up sharply. Is she? Alive. In a Colorado safe zone. I got a message to her about what Michael did. Aisha closed her eyes, feeling both relief and renewed grief. He deserved better than what he got. Maybe he got exactly what he needed, Marcus said. He found his purpose when it mattered most. They stood in silence, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. The world was forever changed. Millions lost to an infection that had been rewritten the rules of death itself. Yet here, on this small island, life continued. They're talking about starting farming operations, Marcus said. Long-term sustainability plans. Schools for children. Children, Aisha repeated. Last week's medical check had confirmed what she suspected. Despite everything, life had found a way to continue inside her. She hadn't told Marcus yet, wanting to be absolutely certain. Do you think it's wrong? She asked suddenly. To bring a child into this world? Now? Marcus considered this. I think it's the most hopeful thing we could do. In the distance, a naval vessel sounded its horn, signaling the end of day watch. Behind them, lights began to illuminate the base. Electricity, safety, community. Imperfect, but real. I'd like to name him Michael, Aisha said softly. If it's a boy. Marcus tightened his arm around her, understanding immediately. I think that would be perfect. As darkness fell over the Atlantic, they turned back toward their new home, walking together across the sand. The world had ended, but somehow they remained. And in that continuation lay the most profound form of hope. Not that things like that would return to how they were, but that what came next might still be worth living for. Behind them, the vast ocean stretched unbroken to the horizon, hiding beneath its surface the final resting place of the oceanic majesty and the thousands who had perished with her. Among them, Michael Chen, who had discovered in the last moments of his life what many never find in decades, the absolute certainty that his existence had mattered. And somewhere, somehow, perhaps that knowledge had accompanied him into whatever waited beyond. The end. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that story. I can't remember for the life of me who recommended this idea, but I appreciate you coming up with the ideas. I appreciate all of you guys for coming up with these cool ideas that you put in the comments. So keep them coming, and I'll keep trying to crank them out for you guys. But come back next time for some more scary stories. And as always, remember to face your fears.